The room next to mine. Chapter 6. The Red Shed. The next morning, Jack and James met early at a quiet cafe near campus, nursing steaming mugs of coffee. The usual chatter and clinking cups felt distant compared to the heaviness they both carried. Jack pulled the folded notes from his pocket and spread them on the table. James leaned in, eyes narrowing. Same handwriting. Looks like it, Jack said. And that symbol, I can't shake it. It means something serious. James bit his lip. You said it's from back home? What kind of trouble? Jack hesitated. People who don't like outsiders, they send warnings first, then things escalate. James swallowed hard. So we're being watched? Jack nodded grimly. Yeah, and maybe worse. Their eyes met, a silent agreement forming. Where do we start? James asked. Jack tapped the symbol. We find out who this group really is. I'll check with some contacts back home. You keep your eyes open here. James's phone buzzed suddenly. He glanced down, an unknown number. He looked at Jack. Should I answer? Jack shrugged. Could be nothing. Or maybe it's them. James took a breath and swiped the screen. James stared at the phone, heart pounding. The screen displayed a simple message instead of a call. Stop digging or you'll regret it. His fingers trembled slightly as he showed the text to Jack. Jack's face hardened, jaw clenched tight. They're watching us already, Jack said quietly. They know we're onto them. James swallowed, a swirl of fear and adrenaline mixing inside him. Should we tell someone? The uni? The cops? Jack shook his head slowly. Not yet. We need proof. If we go running now, they might disappear. Or worse. James nodded, biting his lip. So, what do we do? Jack leaned forward, eyes fierce with determination. We fight smart, we watch, we wait, and we learn who's behind this. The cafe suddenly felt too loud, too bright. James met Jack's gaze, and for a brief moment the danger between them felt almost electric. That afternoon, Jack suggested they head to the university archives. An odd choice, James thought, until he saw where Jack was going. All student groups? James asked, reading the file tabs Jack had pulled. Yeah, Jack said. If this group's been around a while, they might have left a footprint. Posters, student clubs, unofficial meetings, anything. They spent hours poring over dusty newsletters, ancient club rosters, and forgotten protest flyers from decades past. Then Jack froze. He pulled out a faded flyer dated 2014. Unity through order was the header, above the same three-line circle symbol scrolled in the margin. James leaned in. Is that it? Jack nodded slowly. The flyer listed a name at the bottom. Event contact. Daniel H. No surname. But a scribbled note in different handwriting on the back read, They meet off campus now. Red Shed, Thursdays. James whispered. The Red Shed, what's that? Jack was already pulling out his phone. I don't know. But I'm gonna find out. By the time they got back to the flat, the evening sky had shifted to that uneasy grey where shadows seemed to stretch too far and everything felt slightly off. Jack unlocked the door slowly, instincts sharp. James stepped in behind him, already tense. The lights were off, but the apartment wasn't empty. There was no sound, no movement, but the air felt invaded. Jack's eyes scanned the space. Nothing was broken, nothing looked out of place. But when he stepped into his room, he froze. On his bed, laid out carefully, deliberately, was his black leather jacket, the one he hadn't worn in weeks, the one that had been zipped up and shoved in the back of his wardrobe. Folded over it was another note, scribbled in the same jagged handwriting. You're good at looking over your shoulder, not good enough. James appeared behind him, and when he saw the note, his mouth opened. But no words came out. Jack picked up the jacket. It was cold, slightly damp. He looked at James, voice low, controlled. They were in my room. James backed up slowly, heart racing. That means they'd been watching us, listening, maybe even while we... He stopped himself. The air between them crackled with fear. And something else, the terrifying intimacy of being hunted together. They didn't speak much after that. James made tea just to have something to do with his hands. Jack checked every lock in the flat, twice. When they finally settled in Jack's room, the unease hadn't faded. It just sank deeper, quieter. They both sat on the bed, backs against the wall, legs stretched out in front of them. Between them, Jack's old hoodie, the one James had once borrowed and never returned, lay folded like a soft wall neither dared to cross. James sipped his tea in silence, then softly, "Do you think they were watching while we slept?" Jack didn't answer right away. He was watching James instead, eyes dark but steady. "If they were," he said at last, "they saw two blokes trying to keep each other safe. That's it." James nodded, slowly. His voice dropped lower. "You always seem so calm." Jack gave a dry smile. "I'm not. Not really." He reached down, picked up the hoodie, and absently folded it again. "You make me feel like I have to be." James looked down at his hands, the steam from the mug curling around his fingers. "Do I?" Jack hesitated. "Yeah." Silence again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of things they weren't ready to say. Eventually, James whispered, "I'm glad I'm not alone in this." Jack turned his head, watched him. "You never were." And just for a second, only a second, James let his shoulder rest against Jack's. He didn't pull away. Neither of them did. After James had gone to bed, Jack stayed up at his desk, the only light coming from his laptop screen. He stared at the contact for a long time before tapping the screen. "Lucas R. Ballarat Gym." The call rang. Once, twice, a gruff voice answered on the third ring. "You still breathing?" Jack smirked faintly. "Barely." Lucas's tone didn't soften. "You only call when something is wrong." Jack hesitated. "I found a symbol." Silence. Jack continued. "3 curved lines in a circle left on a note in my flat. 3 times. Lucas let out a long breath. "You sure it's them?" "Yeah. It's the same one we found on Darren's ute back then." Lucas swore under his breath. Jack lowered his voice. "They followed me to Melbourne, or they're already here." "Thought you left all that behind, mate." "So did I." Lucas paused. "You still training?" "Every day." "You got backup?" Jack thought of James, asleep in the next room. "Sort of." Another pause, then softer than expected. "Don't try to handle this alone. These people don't just leave notes." "I'm not alone," Jack said quietly. "But he doesn't know everything yet." "Then tell him soon, because if they're watching, they already know who matters to you." Jack went still. The call ended. He stared at the screen for a long time before slowly closing the laptop. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Jack was already dressed when James emerged from his room, hair tousled, voice rough with sleep. "You're up early." Jack, sitting at the kitchen table with a half-empty mug and an unread book in front of him, glanced up. "Didn't sleep." James moved around the kitchen quietly, pouring cereal into a bowl. He glanced at Jack again. His shoulders were tense, jaw tight. He hadn't looked at James once. James sat across from him, spoon clinking in the bowl. "Everything okay?" Jack gave a short nod. "Yeah, just stuff on my mind." That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. James tried to laugh. "Is it the mysterious hoodie thief keeping you up?" Jack gave a tight smile, eyes flickering up just briefly. "No, you sleep like a log." "But you don't," James said it before he could stop himself. "You're always up before me, or pacing in the middle of the night, like you're waiting for something." Jack looked away, lips pressed into a thin line. James leaned in. "You're shutting me out." "I'm not." "You are," James said, quieter now. "And it's fine, okay? You don't owe me anything. We're just flatmates, mates." The last word landed harder than he expected. Jack's voice was soft, low. "You're more than that." James blinked. Jack stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket. "I'm going for a walk." And just like that, he was gone. The door clicked shut, and James sat in the silence, serial forgotten, wondering when something had changed between them, and how long it had been changing before either of them noticed. The flat felt colder after Jack left. James stared at the door for a long moment, then grabbed his laptop and sat at the dining table, the light barely flickering on. He typed the words slowly at first, 3 curved lines in a circle, nothing useful. Then he tried. 3 curved lines, circle symbol warning. A few strange Reddit threads popped up. Symbolic language, rumors. One user had posted a blurry photo, the same symbol carved into the side of an abandoned shed. He clicked the comments. Most were jokes, but one caught his attention. It was used by a group near Ballarat in the 2010s. Anti-outsider, territorial, underground. Had ties to security and youth outreach organisations. James stared. Ballarat, Jack's hometown. He felt his stomach twist. A second tab opened. Ballarat Local News Archive. He searched articles from the early 2010s, filtering for youth violence, local gangs, anything connected. One article caught his eye: gym fire under investigation, possible arson. A place called Core Strength, destroyed in 2017. He clicked. The article mentioned a young boy taken in for questioning, no names released due to age. But there was a quote from the gym's former co-owner. "They want to scare us out. We're not going anywhere." James read the sentence 3 times. He whispered, "Jack, what have you been through?" Jack returned late. James was waiting. He sat on the edge of the couch, laptop closed, face unreadable. Jack froze in the doorway the moment he saw him. Like he knew. "You looked me up," Jack said quietly. James stood. "You lied to me." Jack flinched. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." "You didn't tell me about the fire," James said, stepping forward. "You didn't tell me people in your town were part of something violent, that they left symbols like the ones in our flat." Jack didn't deny it. He dropped his keys on the bench top, shoulders stiff. "I was 13, he said. "I didn't set the fire, but I saw what they were doing, and I didn't stop them." James blinked, unsure what he expected, but not that. Jack kept going. "They called themselves Order, a group of locals who didn't want outside influence in the town. Immigrants, queer kids, anyone different." James's throat tightened. "They started with threats," Jack said, voice distant. "Then arson, assault. They never got caught. Not really. They knew how to avoid it. My uncle ran that gym. He stood up to them. That's why they burned it down." James whispered, "And now they're here." "I don't know if it's the same people," Jack said, "but the symbol is the same, the silence is the same, and if they're back, I have to stop them this time." James looked at him for a long moment, then softly, "Why didn't you tell me?" Jack's voice cracked at the edges. "Because I didn't want you to see me as a scared kid from nowhere who watched his world burn and didn't do enough to stop it." James stepped closer. "I don't see you like that." Jack looked at him then, really looked, and for once his eyes weren't guarded. They were tired, raw, honest. And something inside James stirred. Something frightening and warm and real. "You're not alone in this," James said. Jack nodded once, just barely. But it was enough. They waited until after dark. Jack insisted on taking side streets, quieter alleys. He moved like someone who'd learnt to listen to silence, to read it. James followed close, wearing Jack's old hoodie, his fingers twitching in the pocket around a pocket knife Jack had handed him hours ago. They didn't speak much, but the air between them buzzed with something fierce and wordless, a shared purpose, a line crossed. The red shed turned out to be a half-collapsed industrial structure behind a chain-link fence, tucked behind an old hardware store just off a forgotten tram line. "Looks abandoned," James whispered. Jack gave a grim nod. That's what makes it useful. They slipped through a gap in the fence. The shed loomed above them like a rusted skeleton. James could smell the damp, the dust. A crow screeched somewhere overhead. They stepped inside. Jack raised his phone torch. Broken beams, an overturned chair, empty beer bottles. Faded posters on the wall, and then near the far corner, a fresh one. James moved closer. It was recent. Black paper, white letters, truth through order. Thursday, 9 p.m. Below it, that symbol again, but now with something new, a list of initials, and one of them, bolded, was J.R. Jack stared at it. James whispered, "Is that?" Jack nodded, face pale. "They know I'm coming." The shed's shadows clung to them as they stepped back into the cold night air. James felt the weight of what they'd just uncovered settle deep in his chest. Heavier than fear, sharper than curiosity. Beside him, Jack walked in silence, his jaw tight, every step a quiet promise. They were in this now, tangled in a threat that was no longer just about warnings or symbols. And as James glanced sideways at him, the thought struck hard and unspoken. This was the point where trust would either save them or break them.